Get down.
Violence is common in popular culture, from movies to video games.
God's gonna sit this one out.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Some believe this affects our lives, and some believe that there's no correlation at all.
Well, you got one now.
I do feel like movies get wrongfully blamed for that kind of thing.
I think it is crazy. To me, it's entertainment.
You ever met anybody you didn't kill?
You know, my mom had already exposed me to stuff that was much worse.
Whether you like it or not, violence is a part of life.
Don't blame filmmakers for the way society is today.
Violence in movies and video games has always been a point of controversy. I spoke to two professors at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh to see what they had to say about this. I've seen a lot of movies in my day, but it seems as if ever since 9/11, violence in movies has gotten more gratuitous. What is it, in your opinion, about movie violence that attracts people to the movies?
I feel like movie violence is a good escape for people. They feel like, all right, this is an outlet. And hopefully, that's their only outlet.
When you hear about these school shootings and movie theater shootings, what goes through your head? Do you think that these violent movies get wrongfully blamed for that kind of thing?
You and I could go to a movie and not go shoot up a theater or a school. I feel like those people are weak-minded to begin with and they're prone to violence, and they're looking for that violent escape because they can relate to it in their mind, and they're gonna do it no matter what they're watching.
Do you think that movies should be less violent?
Nah. No. I'm not a big fan of censorship. People, if they want to create something, they're the author of the piece. They should create it the way they want, yeah.
I played a lot of violent video games as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I always saw it as more of an outlet, like if I was having a bad day at work or just if I was going through a rough time in general. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see it the same way?
I see it pretty much the same way. You know, I mean, I've played a couple games myself, like Doom and Mortal Kombat and things like that. If I go to a movie, I'm going to see things like, you know, if you look at the Avengers or something like that, people are getting, you know, buildings are getting destroyed, people are fighting, you know, I mean, last Superman, I mean, him and General Zod, people were dying all over the place, but that's what people see. That's what they, you know, that's what drives them to go see it. If it was them just talking, you know, about stuff that was maybe considered boring, probably people wouldn't go see those things. So I think from an entertainment standpoint, you have to kind of go to more of maybe that visceral edge, you know, and to get that kind of response, you know, from people.
Do you think that video games should be less violent?
You know, that's an interesting question. I mean, so in some of those games I've played, you know, I was thinking about, you know, the idea of the violence, and to me, most of it is cartoonish violence that is disconnected from the real world.
Sure.
You know, so in a lot of cases, you know, I don't think that I'm really shooting somebody or something like that because they're not dying in front of me. You know, there was a game that came out called Soldier of Fortune, and then there was Soldier of Fortune 2, and then the second one, you could actually shoot somebody in like a leg and they would fall down and, you know, they'd be in pain and they'd be screaming, and then you could run up to them. They're basically helpless. You could run up to them and shoot them.
Right.
And quite frankly, I didn't play that game very much. You know, where the first one I played to the completion because I enjoyed playing it. You know, like GTA 4, I liked a lot because it was funny, and Nico, and there were Brucey, there were characters, and they were kind of funny characters, you know. And yeah, you did some things that were maybe not necessarily On the flip side of that, when I bought GTA 5, it wasn't even the violence, it was just the language and like your first mission, like people are swearing and it's the F and this and the words were really inappropriate. And I'm sure it's realistic, but because of that, I never played the game again. Because it was a little too close to reality. And I didn't want to be part of that. Like life is kind of already so, in your face and everything else. I don't need that aspect. And it didn't entertain me. But my middle daughter, she loves like, all the Batman and, the Arcane Asylum, the Arkham City. She has them all, she's beaten them all, and there's a lot of violence in that game, but it's all kind of like cartoon violence, to me. And even The Last of Us, I think both my older girls played that, and there's a lot of violence in that, but there's also a great story there too, When they're pushing that violence towards, demons or, Wolfenstein, there's Nazis. I mean, everybody can get behind, violence against those things because they're bad things.
I'm going to read you something here. There was kind of a news debate in 2007 between Jack Thompson, an attorney, and Paul Evanson, who was a professor and chair of communication and media studies. And in the debate, Jack Thompson argued that in 2005, the American Psychological Association issued a report saying that there was a direct causal link between the playing of violent video games by adolescents and minors and violence in the real world. Levinson argued that it was less of a causation and more of a correlation, meaning instead of one causing the other, they were happening at the same time. What are your thoughts on that? How do you see it?
I think when you look at that sort of gun violence stuff, I think, you really need to look maybe more at, the access that people have to guns, maybe more than, in what kind of society we live in, more than, the video game violence thing.
I also spoke to friends of mine who are fellow gamers to see what they had to say about the subject.
I feel like some people think there's a connection, and I personally think that's a bit foolish. My mom, she wasn't worried about it. She understood that I was, smart enough to not see, go into, play a game like Gears of War. I was like, ooh, I get to saw people in half. This is fun. But I'm not gonna try to then go into the shed and take a chainsaw and cut somebody. Like I don't think that the movie industry or the video game industry is honestly to blame, because they put out warnings like, hey, this has this content, so if you can't handle it, don't watch it. There's movies for children like Zootopia. There's a great movie for kids because it was a really nice movie. I went and watched it. It was cool. It was cute. There's movies that are for a certain age group, and then there's movies, again, for a certain age group that just happen to be older. It's just whatever you're supposed to. If you're going to watch something that's meant for someone who's, more mature, then be more mature. And if you can't, well, that's your fault. If they do something violent, it's because they were going to do something violent regardless. Like, people still committed acts of crime well before video games came out, because everyone needs like a release, but you don't need to be that release on real people.
I think that there's a rating system in place for a reason. They enjoy seeing just like things that would happen in the human body that you might not get to see happen in real life. I think that there are people in this world that are more psychologically susceptible to triggers, such as a violent film or a violent video game. But I do not think that it is to blame.
This is something you do for entertainment, for fun, and I could understand that. The video games contributed. It was not the only thing, but it was a major factor, yes. I would be all for seeing them less violent. The Passion of the Christ, the authentic true story of the suffering of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion and resurrection, was done very well by Mel Gibson in a exact replica of what the Word of God said, according to the accounts recorded in God's Word. And yet it got an R rating in the movie industry because of graphic violence. I'm a conservative person. If you made the movie industry based on what I think is morally right, we would never get past Walt Disney.
In the video game world, I can be who I want to be and do what I want to do. Good example, Grand Theft Auto. Love that game. There are some things in video games that don't need to be in it. There are some video games that have some really screwed up things in it. I mean, beyond screwed up. And there are some that don't really have that big of a problem to them. Humans are inherently violent. I mean, history has taught us that. People in ancient Rome went to the Colosseum just so they could watch people kill each other. The world is violent all around us. And we see the violence on the big screen or on the little screen as almost a mere reflection of what our world is today. You can't turn on the news anymore without hearing of an attack or a shooting somewhere. I can still remember when the first Tremors movie came out, when Jurassic Park came out. Those movies, for us now, we look back at them and we're like, well, those weren't that bad. Those weren't very violent. But when they came out, they got the PG-13 rating. They got the rating that would be like, oh, well, this is more closer to an adult film. Sure. I can't watch this yet. I think they're wrongfully blamed.
Eric Sprouse is a former professor of mine. He is also a good friend. I spoke to him about this issue in depth.
If people are worried about if movies and violence are causing too much gore and gratuitous violence, in society, how about asking parents to do a little something? Yeah. How about be a parent? Yeah. So, kids that are out being violent nowadays, you can say, well, that's the way the movie's for you. That's what caused it. No, it's being parentless. Right. Be a parent. Stand up and do something. I think there's an audience for everything. Okay, so there's an audience out there for violent films, for action blockbusters. There's always an audience for violence. People who are fans of monster movies, they want to see monsters, But you can't you can't picket. Let's be realistic, people. You can't go out there with a picket sign, and say, stop making your successful career art. Yes. Yeah. Stop it, you. Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, I don't come to your house and say, stop making Big Macs. To me, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. Let's not see any more, But by the same token, there'll be people out there that are not me. They're like, oh, I just can't get enough violence. Let's have some gore. Let's have some monsters. Other people out there are like, no, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to watch it, then change the channel. Don't come to my place of business and bitch at me because you make too much violence. So if it's not for you, then don't go see it. It's been an age-old argument for 20 years. Yeah. Probably longer than that, because I know Columbine, they blamed that on the Matrix. You can't lie that there's some psychological tie, okay? Obviously, these kids showed up at Columbine wearing the Matrix, the long jackets with the sunglasses and the machine guns or whatever. They're shooting people. You can't deny that there's some tie, but again, that goes back to being able to separate yourself with reality from science fiction. Yeah. And it's hard to say, well, it's the filmmaker's problem. We're just out to make a buck. Filmmakers are just out to make a buck. And tell a good story. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Bambi, the mother of the baby deer, gets shot. It's just like when Mufasa dies in The Lion King. You said when Scar throws him off that cliff. Is that too violent for kids? The uncle is killing your father by throwing him 100 yards deep into a catacomb. Are the movies this day not violent enough? No, I wouldn't say that. They're violent, but I don't think they need to be any more or any less. When somebody says, is there too much violence in movies nowadays? No, I don't think so. I think it's fine the way it is because you want to tell a real story. It's the way the world has evolved. There are going to be people out there that are going to pick at these things, but that's on them. If they don't like it, don't go see the movie.
The debate about whether movies and video games affect our society has gone on for decades. It is not a problem that is easily solvable. Where do you stand?